For all your hemp wellness needs, information, products, parties, and merch, visit thebudplug.com. Promote your brand here at Viral Hip Hop News. Email me, Sam Ant at thehiphopnews.com. No, wait, let's go.
Absolutely. From a historical perspective, if you can, you got the Hebrew Israelites in New York City, Philly, Washington, everywhere. They say that, you know, we're the original Jewish people. And in a sense, our legacy was stolen. Could you give us a historical perspective of how you see that whole, the Jewish Judaism thing? And did it originate with black people? Where did it originate, in your
Well, the
opinion?
only person that people are thinking didn't was the white people who have taken our identity.
Mm. Wow.
Listen, everybody with any smarts who study history, let's say that there's nothing historically, there's no historical evidence other than the Torah or the Bible that talks about that. There's no history. But let's put the thing in a context that it might make sense. Kemet, Egypt, was invaded at a certain period in time by the Hittites, well, originally the Hyksos, and then the Hittites. And our people came up from the south, down in Sudan, them black, blue people. They had retreated because the Egyptians were all black, blue. I don't know how they can go and look at these jet black mummies and pretend it's them. It's like an insanity beyond anything I could imagine. I don't understand because I've been there. Look at all these people with the big lips. They got this one little white statue of Nefertiti in Europe that the man who faked it wrote on his deathbed that he faked it, and the letters is in all of the world archives to see. And all of the rest of the pictures of Nefertiti, she's got lips better than mine, more beautiful than mine, and they pretend it's not there. That notwithstanding, the people we call in the Hebrews and the people we call in Egypt, these are all black people. If the Hebrew came into Egypt, let's take their story. So they came into Egypt at a particular time, and they were there for nearly 400 years. You telling me all them big black men in Egypt didn't say shalom, shalom to one of those beautiful sisters who was Israelites? I don't know what's wrong with people. What's wrong with their head? Of course, the Israelites were black, and they still are. But it's not all of our people that were Israelites. That was a small group of black people who got into a conflict in North Africa where some sort of civil war ensued, and they went northeast into Canaan. When the blacks from the south came to push the Hyksos oppressors out, these are the black people who might have felt that because they had lived there for a couple of hundred years with the Hyksos, they would be treated like the enemy. They decided to leave for whatever the reason was. I'm not going to get into the Bible, historical, this and that. But the bottom line is history will only show the Hebrew Israelite as black African people. It will not show any other people there. The people we call the Ashkenazis and the Sephardics, the Ashkenazis, the German, the Polish, the Jews, these Khazarian people from northeastern Europe who now there. They didn't even, in their own history, it tells how the king of the Khazars converted to Judaism. His whole people, he converted them to the Hebrew tradition because he was looking for a unifying force. And he didn't want to go with Islam because Islam was at war. He didn't want to go with the Christianity thing. They were at law. The Khazars of Eastern Europe were primary mercenaries for both the Christian and the Jews. So he picked, and the Muslims. So the Khazarian kings picked a tradition that they thought would be more sedentary. And that's how the Eastern European became heavily Jewish. Now, some of them became that because of the blacks that the Roman captured and took into the land, and that the Greeks captured and took into the land. But the majority of them have no black blood at all. A few of them do. And that's why you hear them use terms like Oriental Jews. They're trying to say they may be a little bit not so white. You know what I'm saying? So that's why you can see black Palestinians. The Palestinians, which is another fraudulent identity, the Palestinians are part of the original Hebrew Israelite population. That's why they're so black and brown. They became Palestinians when they got converted to Islam, which was a new ideology that became a religion. It can get complex. That's why studying history is very important. And Dr. Ben's book, Black Man of the Nile and His Family, I think is a good book for people to start with. And then a book by a brother named Robin Walker from the UK. Robin wrote a book called When We Rule. And he covers about 3,000 years of our history, including that period of time. And he'll bring a lot of light, shed a lot of light on this period. But no, our brothers, Hebrew Israelites, they're Black folks, But the weakness is that all Black people who have had an experience in history try to make all Black people that. No, it's like the Moorish community. You had an experience in North Africa with the Arabs and the Jewish people running from the Roman people. But that wasn't all of Africa that had that experience. Okay? So take that experience, put it in its context, and forge your identity around that. But don't come and tell me I'm living out in the bush in South Africa that I'm a Moor, because that's silly.
Right.
So we have to just learn history, get rid of the mysteries, understanding our racial relationship, unite on the basis of that. That's what we really call Pan-Africanism. We're a melting pot of humanity, Black humanity, with multiple ways of expressing our understanding of divinity, cosmology, and ecology. And we call that explanation culture. And it varies depending on where we are. But the laws we're trying to teach one another is universally the same.
Right. I seen that you been all over Europe, Africa, the Caribbeans teaching. What are some of your experiences that you've seen as far as the dichotomy with race everywhere? Black people in the Caribbean, Black people in Europe, Black people in Africa. Are there some like similarities between Black people in the US? Can you kind of talk about some of the things that you've seen?
Oh, yes, sir. We are the same people. What the differences we see among us is the things of the Europeans that we've adopted in our character. If we dump their adaptations, we're the same. Some of us were brought to the Caribbean. We were enslaved there. We fought wars and rebellions there for centuries. Some was brought to North America. We were enslaved here. We fought wars and resistance. Some are in Europe. People never talk about before we were brought to North America to be enslaved, we were taken to Europe and enslaved. They never talk about European enslavement of African peoples, even before the transatlantic slave trade. You understand? And then there were those who went there with the invasion of the Moors into Spain and into France, and who stayed as a part of that population. And then there are those who migrated during colonialism. That's the military genocidal occupation of Africa after the Berlin Conference in 1885 by all of the white armies of Europe, financed by Wall Street. They said, well, America didn't have no army there. No, your army was your money. You paid the others to kill and murder Africans and rob their gold and diamonds and cobalt and other things from them. And so that's why history is important, because it'll clear this shit up real quick. It'll let you see it, real birth. Wherever I've been, in the UK and France and Spain, and I've met another African, we do like the Yoruba term lukomi. The term means you belong to me and I belong to you. You may speak a different language, you may practice another religion or culture, but we belong to each other. Same thing when I go to Trinidad, or I go to St. Thomas, or I go to Jamaica, I go to Haiti. We know we belong to each other. We understand the linguistic differences and the cultural differences. And sometimes we use the brainwashing of our European oppressors to use those European differences to divide us. But when we dump the European adaptation from our culture and our behavior, we just one people. When I step off of a plane in Africa, I mean, like, I can't even explain it. The love and the beauty. That don't mean people over there ain't gonna do some bad things. I mean, I own a hotel over there, me and some brothers. We got a big hotel. Some of the people misuse their opportunities, but they do the same thing here. That ain't an African thing. Greed ain't an African thing. Robbery ain't an African thing. You know what I'm saying? But for the most part, when I step on that continent, I am in heaven. You know, even on a bad day, even taking a car, we ran into a flood one time. We were trying to figure out what to do. So we said, okay, some old people were so smart. They said, look, take the battery out of the car, put it on top of the car. And they didn't want me to get wet. I got wet anyway because the water came in the car. They said, Prof, you get on the back seat and stand up, and we're going to push the car across the flood waters, which we did. Went to the other side, put the battery in, and went on down the road. We didn't know any of those people. You know, the three of us riding down the road and ran into the flood. The beauty, when people realize, because they don't know our history and culture on the continent, most of the people, they don't know about chattel slavery and transatlantic slavery. They don't know what we've suffered and gone through. One day, and we were starting Emancipation Day in Ghana, and we were marching down the street, and I didn't know this could happen, right? These young people from the University of Legon decided they would dress up like enslaved people and be shackled and chained, and they were being beaten with a whip, right? I lost it. This is the first time I know this could happen. One moment I see the girl get hit with the whip and I see the welt come up on the back. And the next thing I know, I got 4 people holding me on the ground because I done beat up the brother that had the whip, right? And the minister saying, small, never come. I went there. I went there and didn't know I went there to rescue this woman. And the young people are standing over me saying, oh, Prof, we just wanted you to feel what y'all felt. We wanted to feel what y'all felt. I laid on that ground and cried until they picked me up. And I apologized to the young man that I jumped. And about a week later, Dr. Jeffries, my teacher, and I were riding in the north, and I'll end this. And we get to Kumasi. And the brother, who's our tour guide, showing us around the palace of the Asantehene, the King of Kings. When we get upstairs where he does the lecture, he just broke down and started crying. So we wanted to know, did we do something wrong? No, he had seen on TV the marching and celebration showing chattel slavery. They had never heard of this thing happening to their people. And he's crying. This is a man in his 60s, crying like a baby, saying, we are so sorry. We didn't know this happened to you.
Wow.
Many people in Africa don't know we came from Africa to here because we haven't done the job of educating them or ourselves on the history of the last 500 years. And it is our job, especially here, because we have a greater opportunity and a greater access to the body of knowledge, greater access to technology, let us do the research to help enlighten our brothers and sisters at home while they enlighten us on that history that we missed out on for 500 years.